The roast was getting cold, but nobody at the Miller family dinner table seemed to notice. They were too busy dissecting my latest failure. A bank teller, Michael? Really? My father's voice dripped with disdain as he cut into his meat. 4 years at Stanford Business School to become a bank teller. I took another sip of wine, letting the expensive Bordeaux, which I'd brought but nobody had acknowledged, roll across my tongue. At 32, I'd learned that silence was often the best response to these Sunday dinner interrogations. Your brother's making partner at his law firm, Mom chimed in, right on cue. And your sister just closed that huge real estate deal in Miami. Ah, yes, the golden children. James with his prestigious law degree, and Sarah with her thriving real estate empire. The pride of the Miller family. It's actually personal banking advisor, I corrected quietly, knowing it wouldn't matter. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Oh, excuse me, personal banking advisor. Like that's any better. He leaned forward, his face flushing with familiar disappointment. Do you know what people say? Their faces when they ask what my Stanford graduate son is doing with his life. I did know. I knew exactly what people said, especially the board members of First Atlantic Bank, the institution where I worked as a supposedly humble advisor. The same board members who had no idea that I actually owned 71% of the bank through a complex web of holding companies and investment vehicles. Robert, maybe we should, Mom started, but Dad was on a roll. You're nothing but a disappointment, he sneered, jabbing his fork in my direction. All that potential wasted. We spent a fortune on your education. And for what? I thought about the document sitting in my office downtown. The loan application my parents had submitted to save their struggling manufacturing business. The same application that would cross my desk tomorrow morning, though they had no idea I controlled the bank's major lending decisions. I'm doing fine, Dad, I said softly. Fine. He barked out a laugh. You call this fine? Living in that tiny apartment, driving that 10-year-old car, working as a glorified clerk. The tiny apartment was actually a penthouse I owned through a shell corporation. The old car was deliberately chosen to maintain my cover. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. At least James and Sarah had ambition, Mom added, shaking her head. They wanted to make something of themselves. I smiled, remembering the meeting I'd had last week with the partners of Wilson and Gray, the law firm where James was supposedly about to make partner. I'd acquired the firm 6 months ago, another quiet addition to my growing financial empire. The partners had been quite clear that my brother was actually nowhere near partnership track. You know what your problem is? Dad continued, warming to his favorite subject, my failures. You never think big picture. Never take risks. Always playing it safe with your little banking job. If he only knew, the little banking job was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the past decade, I'd built a financial services empire worth billions, all while maintaining the facade of a modest banking career. First Atlantic was just one of 17 banks I controlled across the country, along with investment firms, real estate companies, and yes, one prestigious law firm. Maybe you're right, I said, standing up. The weight of the moment, knowing what tomorrow would bring, made it hard to maintain my usual passive expression. Where are you going? Mom demanded. We're not finished with dinner. I think we are. I picked up my coat. Thanks for the lovely evening. Running away again, Dad scoffed. Just like always. You're nothing but a disappointment. Yes, I heard you the first dozen times. I paused at the door, looking back at my family. You might want to keep your phone handy tomorrow. I hear banks can be pretty strict about loan applications these days. The confusion on their faces almost made me smile. Almost. Later that night, in my real office, the one that occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, I reviewed their loan application one final time. The business was in worse shape than they'd admitted. Without this loan, the company my father had spent 30 years building would collapse within months. My phone buzzed. James calling, right on schedule. "Little brother," he started, his voice artificially cheerful. "You left to dinner rather abruptly. Did I miss another recitation of your great legal victories?" I asked mildly, signing off on a different acquisition. This one worth $300 million. "Don't be like that. Dad's just concerned about you. We all are." "Living so?" Modestly. I thought about the document I'd received that morning, showing that James had been quietly borrowing money from the firm to cover his gambling debts, the same firm I now owned. "Your concern is touching," I replied. "How's the partnership coming along?" A pause. "It's progressing. These things take time." "Indeed they do." I smiled at the irony. "Say, didn't you handle some work for First Atlantic Bank a few years ago?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes. Why?" "Just curious. Give my best to Mom and Dad. Tomorrow should be interesting." I hung up before he could respond, turning back to the loan application. With a single signature, I could save or destroy my family's legacy. The question was, after years of their constant criticism and dismissal, did I want to? The sun was setting over the city skyline as I made my decision. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. The carefully constructed facade I'd maintained for a decade would finally crack. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Janet, my real executive assistant. "Execute Protocol Omega. It's time." Her response was immediate. "All set for tomorrow, sir. The documents are prepared." I walked to the window, watching the city lights blink to life one by one. In 12 hours, my family would learn the truth about their disappointment of a son. The bank teller who secretly controlled their financial fate. The irony would be spectacular. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at First Atlantic's headquarters early, watching from my private elevator as employees filed into the building. None of them knew that the quiet personal banking advisor on the third floor was actually their boss. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Janet activated Protocol Omega. Every major executive at First Atlantic received an email announcing an emergency board meeting. Simultaneously, my family's loan application was escalated to priority status. My phone buzzed. Dad calling. Right on schedule. "Michael? The bank just called about our loan application. They want us to come in immediately." I could hear the tension in his voice. The manufacturing company was his life's work, and its survival hinged on this loan. "Really?" I kept my voice neutral. "That seems unusually fast." "They said something about special instructions from the owner. Do you know anything about this?" "I'm just a bank teller, remember? I couldn't resist the small dig, but I'll see you when you get here." An hour later, I watched through my office's one-way glass as my parents were escorted into the building. They looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable than during last night's dinner. Mom was clutching her handbag like a shield. Dad's shoulders, usually squared with confidence, were tight with anxiety. "They're here," Janet announced through the intercom, along with Mr. James Miller and Miss Sarah Miller. Ah, they'd called in the successful siblings for support. Perfect. "Have them wait in the main conference room," I instructed. "Make sure the board members are there first." I gave them 20 minutes to stew. Through the security feeds, I watched my family interact with First Atlantic's top executives. Dad was trying to maintain his usual authoritative demeanor, but I could see the nervous tapping of his fingers. James was attempting to network, unaware that every person in that room now reported to his disappointment of a brother. At 10:30 sharp, I pressed the button that would begin the revelation. The conference room's massive screens lit up with the bank's ownership structure, a complex web of holding companies and investment vehicles that all led back to one name, Michael Miller. The door opened, and I walked in wearing a Tom Ford suit that cost more than Dad's car. The board members immediately stood, a chorus of "Good morning, Mr. Miller," filling the room. The look on my family's faces was priceless. "Hello, Dad," I said quietly. "Sleep well after dinner last night." He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. "Michael?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. What is this?" "This," I gestured around the magnificent conference room, "is my bank. One of 17, actually, but who's counting?" James had gone pale, likely remembering all the legal work he'd done for First Atlantic. Work that had crossed my desk without him knowing. "That's impossible." Sarah finally found her voice. "You're a bank teller." "Personal banking advisor," I corrected with a smile. "It's a useful cover when you want to build something without family interference." I sat at the head of the table, enjoying the stunned silence. "Now, about that loan application." Dad's face was flushing, but whether with anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. "All this time?" "Yes, all this time. While you were calling me a disappointment, mocking my little banking job, comparing me to my more successful siblings, I let the words hang in the air. I was building an empire." I nodded to Janet, who distributed folders to everyone present. "Inside, you'll find some interesting documents. The true state of Wilson and Gray Law Firm, which I acquired 6 months ago." I looked at James, who had gone even paler, including certain financial irregularities that the partners were kind enough to bring to my attention. James slumped in his chair. Mom gasped. "You'll also find details about the recent collapse of the Miami real estate deal that Sarah's been bragging about." I turned to my sister, the one that fell through because the financing was suddenly withdrawn by my bank. Sarah's perfectly manicured hands trembled as she opened the folder. And finally, I focused on my parents, a complete analysis of your manufacturing company. The missed payments, the hidden debts, the deferred maintenance. Everything you conveniently left off the loan application. "We can explain," Dad started, but I held up a hand. "No need. I've had my people analyzing the business for months. We know exactly what's wrong and what it would take to fix it." The silence in the room was deafening. Board members tried to look anywhere but at my family's humiliation. "Why?" Mom's question was soft but clear. "Why hide all this from us?" I leaned forward, choosing my words carefully. "Do you remember when I first started at Stanford? When I tried to tell you about my ideas for algorithmic trading and digital banking?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. He remembered. "You said I was dreaming too big, that I needed to be practical, follow the traditional path, like James and Sarah." I smiled without humor. "So I decided to build something on my own. No family connections, no expectations, no constant comparisons, just pure merit." "And the bank teller job?" Sarah asked. "Gave me insights you can't get from the top floor. Every major executive in my company starts at entry level, though they don't know I'm the one requiring it." I opened my own folder, pulling out a single document. "Now, about your loan." Dad straightened, his business instincts taking over. "Given our relationship, I assume." "That's not how I run my banks." I cut him off. "Every loan application is evaluated on its merits. I slid the document across the table. Your company needs more than just a $2 million loan. It needs complete restructuring. They stared at the document. A comprehensive rescue plan that would save the business but require them to give up significant control. The choice is yours, I continued. Accept the plan, save the company, but work under my bank's oversight, or decline and try your luck elsewhere. Though I should mention we've acquired most of your other lending options over the past year. The boardroom fell silent as my family grappled with their new reality. The son they dismissed as a disappointment now held their financial fate in his hands. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Take some time to discuss it. Janet will show you to a private room. Oh, and Dad? He looked up, still shell-shocked. About that Stanford education you paid for? Consider this its return on investment. The next few weeks were a study in shifting power dynamics. My family's carefully constructed hierarchy, with me at the bottom, had been shattered, replaced by something none of us quite knew how to navigate. Dad accepted the restructuring plan, of course. He didn't have a choice, not if he wanted to save his company. But watching him sign the papers, his hand trembling slightly, I felt no triumph. Just a strange emptiness where satisfaction should have been. You could have told us, he said quietly after the signatures were done. All these years, would it have made a difference? I asked. Or would you have just found new ways to be disappointed? He had no answer for that. The changes came swiftly after that. My team of financial experts descended on Dad's company, implementing the restructuring plan with surgical precision. Every inefficiency was identified, every wasteful process eliminated. It was painful to watch him struggle with losing control, but necessary for the company's survival. James was the first to try damage control. He showed up at my real office, not the modest third-floor workspace I'd used as cover, a week after the revelation. Look, about all those things I said, he started, fidgeting with his Italian silk tie. About my wasted potential, my lack of ambition, my embarrassing career choices. I kept my voice neutral as I signed off on a billion-dollar acquisition. I was wrong, obviously. He'd attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Who would have thought my little brother would end up owning my law firm? Speaking of which, I pulled out a file. Let's discuss your gambling debts. He paled. Michael, I can explain. No need. The firm's forensic accountants have explained everything quite thoroughly. $300,000 borrowed from client accounts. That's a serious ethical violation, James. Please, he whispered. You can't report this. My career would be over. I finished. You'd be disbarred. Probably face criminal charges. I let him sweat for a moment before continuing. Fortunately, the money has been repaid, anonymously, and the accounts reconciled. The partners have agreed to keep this quiet, provided you accept a transfer to our Singapore office. Singapore, he stammered. Fresh start. Away from the casinos. Take it or take your chances with the ethics board. He took it, of course. Sometimes help comes in the form of forced choices. Sarah was next, arriving in a storm of designer perfume and wounded pride. You deliberately sabotaged my deal, she accused, pacing my office. No, I protected my bank from a high-risk investment. I corrected. The Miami market is overvalued, and your numbers didn't add up. Any competent banker would have made the same decision. But I'm your sister. Exactly why I had to be extra careful about any appearance of favoritism. I met her gaze steadily. You want to be taken seriously in real estate. Build something real, not just a house of cards propped up by family connections. She left angry, but returned a week later with a solid proposal for a mixed-use development. I had my team review it thoroughly. No special treatment, and when it proved viable, approved the funding. Sometimes tough love is the best investment. Mom was the hardest to deal with. She showed up at my penthouse one evening, taking in the spectacular view with tears in her eyes. "All those times I worried about you," she said softly. "Wondering if you'd ever make something of yourself, if you'd ever live up to your potential. And all along, I was exceeding it," I replied, "just not in the way you expected. Why the deception? Why let us think you were struggling?" I poured us both a glass of wine, the same Bordeaux they'd ignored at that last family dinner. "Remember when I was 10 and I won the state math championship?" She nodded. "Instead of celebrating, you and Dad immediately started talking about which competitions I should enter next, which achievements would look best for college applications. Every success just created pressure for the next one. We wanted you to excel," she protested. "No, you wanted me to excel your way, on your terms, following your path." I sipped my wine. "So I chose to build something away from all that pressure. Something that would succeed or fail based solely on its own merits. And now that we know, now we learn to be a family without the constant measuring and comparing, without the need to prove anything." The changes in our family dynamics came slowly, but steadily. Dad's company, under professional management, began to thrive. He gradually learned to be proud of its success without needing to control every decision. James found unexpected fulfillment in Singapore, away from his old enablers and the pressure of living up to his own hype. He even met someone, a corporate lawyer who helped him face his gambling addiction. Sarah's development project succeeded on its own merits, teaching her the satisfaction of earning success rather than manipulating connections. She started mentoring young women in real estate, sharing lessons learned the hard way. Mom struggled the longest with our new reality, but eventually found her way to a different kind of maternal pride, one based on acceptance rather than expectations. As for me, I stepped out of the shadows, taking a more public role in my companies. The story of the secret banking empire made headlines for a while, but the media eventually moved on to newer sensations. 6 months after that fateful loan meeting, we had another Sunday dinner. Not at my parents' house this time, but at my penthouse. The conversation was different. Less comparison, more connection. Less judgment, more understanding. "I have to ask," Dad said as we finished dessert, "do you ever regret it? The years of hiding your success?" I thought about it, looking around at my family. James, relaxed and healthy after months of therapy. Sarah, discussing her latest project with genuine passion rather than bragging. Mom, finally learning to listen instead of evaluate. "No," I said finally. We all needed to learn some hard lessons. About success, about family, about what really matters. "And what really matters?" Mom asked softly. "Not the size of your bank account or the impressiveness of your title," I replied, "but the integrity of your work and the authenticity of your relationships." Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood at my window looking out over the city. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Thank you for saving my company and for teaching me what real success looks like." I smiled, thinking about the long journey from disappointment to this moment. Sometimes the greatest success isn't in proving others wrong, but in helping them grow right alongside you. My phone buzzed again. Janet, with news about another potential acquisition. Tomorrow, I'd go back to building my empire. But tonight, I savored something rarer. A family finally learning to see each other clearly, without the distorting lens of expectations. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the wisdom to know when to stop keeping score and start building bridges, even if those bridges are built with billion-dollar banks.